Just in terms of collaborating with others, I know that there have been, still in Disney days, there were a couple of other story artists who are spoken of often well. I don't know which ones you've worked with directly, but I'd be curious to know if there are things you picked up from specifically Chris Sanders, or also one guy I can't hear mentioned without people gushing over is Joe Ranft. He sounds like a wonderful person. I'd be curious to know, like, what are some things that you learned from some of these guys and
Oh,
gals, whoever else you might have learned from.
well, Joe was just an amazing human being. And yes, of course, people are gushing about him. They gushed about him when he was alive, and we all miss him so much now, even after all these years. But he just loved the story process. And so whenever he talked about it, you just hung on his words. And he was a friend, he was a friend before he was a colleague. I met him through mutual friends and my husband when I was at Cal Arts, and he was teaching the freshmen and the first 2 years story, but I never got to take his class. I met him, then I started working with him at Disney. But it was so much in his attitude, um, of just enjoying the process, and trusting in the process that, oh, it doesn't work now, but we'll figure it out. Someone's going to have a good idea. And the thing that I learned from Joe was everybody has that potential, that their work, there's something in the work. So no matter how bad a sequence is when you first see it, always find that thing that you like about it and talk about that first, because it not only puts that story artist at ease, but also makes that story artist feel seen and heard, and that they do have something to offer. And then you can go into what's not working and why.
Mm,
But it was always, don't just slam it and walk out,
mm,
like that so many
mm,
people have done in the past. It's
mm,
look at it, find that, even if it's like, I like how you draw that character's expression, or I like how you did
mm,
this, right? Even if it had nothing to do with the story per se, find that thing and then talk about it, but always give them the reasons. Don't just say that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. Always give them the reason it doesn't work, and try to offer some suggestions. Be constructive, don't just be. And that was the thing, he was the gentle giant. He just had such a positive, nurturing nature to him that you didn't want to look bad in front of Joe. You wanted to please Joe, you wanted to be like Joe, and that was sort of the miracle that was Joe. He wasn't perfect, he was a goofball, and he could waste time, and he could do, he could, do all these, but he invited me, after I had left DreamWorks, to a story lecture he was giving at Disney. He'd flown down from Pixar and was giving a story lecture. And so I went in and I sat and listened to it in a room full of story artists, and he got choked up talking about it,
mm,
literally choked up. He had to stop himself. That's how much he loved it. And so that's why everybody loved Joe, and wanted to be like Joe. And Joe was one of those guys who had a funky drawing style,
mm,
but it was solid, but it wasn't, he never drew characters on model. It was all his own take on the characters, but didn't matter. He just thought about what was deep inside a character and was able to put it on the page.
mm.
So yeah, so that was Joe. Chris Sanders. um, I can't really think of him much without pairing him a bit with Kelly Asbury, who's another great story artist and director, and just, but I worked with both of them in on Beauty and the Beast and A Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast. and they were just alone and together. But if we want to focus on Chris, he was really funny, and he was just sort of wacky and all over the place, and we worked so well together. But bring Kelly into the mix, and it exploded into craziness. I know we were sort of in development hell for a while after Beauty and the Beast, and Kelly was working on stuff, and Chris and I were working on some Fantasia 2000. Well, it was just Fantasia Continued at the time, ideas with Hindel and Mike Gabriel and a couple of other things. But I had no idea until years later that they would make a bet at how quickly they could get me in tears laughing in the morning. So I would walk in, I loved working with these guys because literally I would be almost on the floor in tears rolling because they would just put this show on for me every morning. It was just, but it was a good time. But Chris was incredible on Beauty and the Beast, on everything he worked, everything he touched. He had such a unique take on everything. But I remember on Lion King, I had written out the Ghost of Mufasa scene, and now was trying to board it, and my draftsmanship just wasn't up to the task of drawing these. But I had the idea, of, okay, it starts in the water, but then it goes up to, it's a reflection, and then we go up to the sky and all of that. And and everything I drew just looks sort of like me, it was like, just didn't have that thing. So I talked to Chris about it. And so we stayed up late one night, and he did, I don't know if you've seen them, these incredible pastel cloud drawings of Mufasa walking out in very Chris Sanders style, but just magnificent. And I was boarding all the other stuff, and he was drawing that up for me and putting it on the boards. And then I was trying to get ready for the pitch, and he came in that day with this piece of music, said, I think this would be great for this, and we, at that time when we were pitching, we rarely ever played music while we were pitching because of the timing, but he played it for me. I was like, oh yeah. So we practiced a bit. And it was Ennio Morricone's piece from The Mission. So Chris sat in on that pitch with me when I was pitching it to the directors for the first time. And he brought in his boombox, and it was, that was back on cassette days. And so I'm pitching it, and I'm focusing on the boards, and then he hits the music just when the ghost starts to come forward and everything. And I finish the, remember. I turn around, and both directors just had tears going down their face. That was with the collaboration with Chris. I couldn't have pulled that off by myself. He was great. But he just had those out of the box ideas that, he's great. He's a blast to work with. I miss working with him.